Hey, let's run up a minute.
Living on Main Street, I've been trying to get dough, no pastry. I've been living on golden hasty. When it's cold outside, I get pasty. White boy got flows like Sway Lee. Like the best street boys had JT. I got mad beats banging off safety. I'm a crip young man living HD. Pop heads cause I got ADHD.
What's up, guys? It's Wednesday, October 19th. It's 11 a.m. and this is the newsletter. So I came across something very interesting. I haven't seen anybody talk about it recently or in the past. And I came across an article that had said a new renaissance. So then I looked up a new renaissance on Google. And then I found something very interesting from the Jewish Funders Network. And what it was is it's the Jewish Funders Network, C19scenarios.org, and their scenarios process. And they laid out 4 scenarios. And this was back in, I believe, 2019 or early 2020 when they released all these scenarios. So this is going to be a 4-part series. There's going to be 4 videos that I'm going to put out back to back that are going to go over the 4 scenarios that they laid out, that with the theme of the world after the pandemic. It's hard to know what the future holds now more than ever. The pandemic is producing major upheaval, and we don't know yet where all the chips are going to fall. We do know, however, that the world will be transformed and the Jewish community will confront momentous changes. That's why at Jewish Funders Network, we've embarked on a scenarios design process that imagines how the country and the world will look like in the next 2 years. We can't predict, but we can imagine alternative futures that will affect the Jewish community in different ways. We don't ask if the scenarios are probable, but if they are plausible. So it's going to be a 4-part series. So definitely subscribe if you haven't already. And we're going to cover all these 4 scenarios, see what they had predicted, see where we're at now, and which scenario lines up closest to where we're at right at this moment. And then they outline what's going to happen in 2023. So we can have a competitive advantage knowing how this will all unfold for the different scenarios. So stick through it. And the first one we're going to cover is the new renaissance. But first, we're going to watch this video, which is a summary of all like this whole scenario outlining, etc. So let's watch it.
It's hard to make predictions, especially about the future. Maybe now more than ever. The pandemic is producing major upheaval, and we don't yet know where. We do know, however, that the world will be transformed, and our community will confront momentous changes. That's why, at Jewish Funders Network, we've embarked in a scenarios design process that imagines how the country and the world will look in the next 2 years. We can't predict, but we can imagine alternative futures that will affect the Jewish community in different ways. We don't ask if the scenarios are probable, but are they plausible? Scenarios are not strategic plans. They're not about the community, but rather about the context in which the community operates. They're mostly about the things we don't know, about the things that are coming at us from the future. They work from the outside in, helping organizations wind tunnel their strategies. They let you ask, how does my organization fare in these scenarios? What threats and opportunities may present themselves? What do we need to do today to prepare? We analyzed the uncertainties that we face, and we selected 2 key dimensions to structure our scenarios: the strength of economic indicators and the level of cohesion and equality in society. We then imagined how these dimensions can evolve in the next 2 years and created 4 different scenarios. In one, the economy has recovered and improved. Society has higher cohesion and less inequality. The world is experiencing a new version of the Roaring Twenties. We called this scenario. In another, the economy has bounced back, but the recovery has accentuated existing inequalities and created even more fragmentation and social tension. This is a world of gated communities for the rich and riots for the poor. We called this scenario have and have-nots. In the third scenario, the economy doesn't recover. We are in a long depression, and simultaneously, the society is fragmented, even violent. Inequality rises. The economic crisis fuels extremist movements, and society approaches the breaking point. We called this scenario back to the 1930s. In the last scenario, the economy doesn't recover, but the smaller pie is distributed more equitably. The society has learned to exercise solidarity, and a new spirit of cohesion has emerged from the pandemic. We are poorer, but seem to be happier. We called this scenario a smaller but tastier pie. After designing the scenarios, we asked what their implications are for different sectors within the Jewish community. What are the challenges and opportunities that each alternative future presents us? For example, how will human service agencies cope with the double whammy of more needs and less funding? How will we do Israel engagement in a world in which travel remains infrequent? How do we benefit from a renaissance in arts and culture? How do we keep the community safe? How do we work with students when in most scenarios there's a decrease of young people going to campus? Will we see more assimilation? Will the hostility of the general society in some scenarios result in a bigger sense of community? And finally, we asked ourselves, how do we prepare to be resilient in each scenario? What are the steps that we need to take today to confront the future? What new skills will we need? What new organizational architectures? What new coalitions? Each of us would love to see the world evolving toward a preferred scenario. But we resisted the temptation of a bad judgment on any, as each scenario presents us with challenges, threats, and opportunities. Ultimately, we cannot stop the tsunami of the future. But if we're thinking about the future with creativity and open-mindedness, we can learn how to surf it.
So we're going to know exactly how this is all going to play out. And I'm curious what other people think as far as the scenarios and which one is more likely to play out. Do you think it's, if we go to the scenarios here, so a new renaissance, have and have nots, back to the 1930s, or a smaller but tastier pie? Let me know in the comments what scenario you think we might be in. But now we're going to dive into the first one, which is a new renaissance. And let's see what this scenario outlines. So they said in 2020, this is how things were. So the Jennifer Institute in Oxford, a nonprofit vaccine research facility, starts human trials in its COVID vaccine. Some drug companies, subsidized by governments, take an enormous risk and start producing the vaccine before the tests are finished. The vaccine works, and thanks to that foresight, vaccination starts in earnest in the fall. With the vaccine success and smart social distancing protocols, the feared fall wave of COVID is minimized. This result ushers in a new era of intersector cooperation, specifically among the nonprofit, corporate, and governmental sectors. With the prospect of a return to normal, a timid economic recovery starts in the fall of 2020. After the election, smart combinations of government support and risk capital manage to shore up big business. In some areas of the economy, the recession hits a reset button. Distortions in some prices, from oil to big city rent, are corrected. America is collectively poorer, but paradoxically, the recession reorganizes part of the economy and makes it more efficient. Despite the mounting debt, there is a solid base on which to rebuild. So that's 2020. And think about how the fall of 2020 and how they said a timid economic recovery starts. That's when crypto started to pop off. And 2021, by March of 2021, air travel is at 65% of pre-COVID levels. It takes until December to return to the pre-COVID mark. But that reflects not just the recession, but the fact that expansion of remote work has made business travel less necessary. By mid-2021, American optimism returns. The economy is not yet at pre-COVID levels, but people feel that we vanquished this together. The pandemic is seen as a great equalizer, and people feel a sense of kinship and common destiny with their fellow Americans. The pandemic also has quieted some of the most furious disagreements in American society. The recognition that immigrants make up 30% of healthcare workers tempers hostility towards immigrants. The discussion around less or more government is obsolete. as it is now obvious that the private sector and government both need one another. The need for universal healthcare adjusted to the particularities of the American capitalist system is widely recognized, and there is little opposition to a Booker-Romney healthcare bill doing just that. In September 2021, a bipartisan Rebuild America program starts to update the country's aging infrastructure. The program is a big provider of jobs and helps push unemployment down to 7%. People joke that it does not seem to matter who is in the White House because all major legislation is bipartisan. The increased national spirit, however, does not mean increased xenophobia. Americans recognize that effective international cooperation conquered the virus and international organizations regained some of their former luster. Many people had started to move towards the suburbs at the height of the pandemic out of fear of disease and mounting crime, but by the end of 2021, that trend starts to reverse. When urban real estate prices plummet, American cities become younger and cool. However, the youth of 2022 is different from that of previous years. Everybody has been forced to confront the possibility of death, and that has made people less frivolous and more intentional. Generation Z leads a cultural and artistic renaissance that deals with transcendental issues and becomes a way of expressing the anxieties and hopes of the time. As David Brooks writes, after the Black Death came the Renaissance, and after the Spanish flu, we had the Roaring Twenties. Now we have the Great Renewal. American cities are the center of that renewal. So that's 2021. Then 2022, it says attendance at religious services dwindles. On the one hand, the success of science in the fight against COVID creates a backlash against organized religion, which is seen in most cases wrongly as obscurantist and anti-science. The other people now have different ways of expressing their spirituality, many through art. In the Pew Report of September 2022, the number of nuns, people of no religion, has grown to 35% of American adults. The fact that people feel a greater sense of kinship with the country as a whole suggests that ethnic, cultural, and religious identities will weaken. The family unit was strengthened during the pandemic, but it is now weaker than ever. People feel they have been confined enough and now want to be out in the world. Children leave home as soon as they can, and adults go out with friends more than before. New forms of entertainment develop rapidly. During COVID, people developed a new appreciation for senior citizens, but now there is a subtle undercurrent of resentment against the elderly. Young people feel that their hopes and dreams have been sacrificed to save a few, I can't say that word, who even in normal times consumed a disproportionate amount of resources and produced little. In some, solidarity in the general society means weakened solidarity inside the home and the tribe. Artificial intelligence continues to develop rapidly, but remote learning has not replaced traditional schooling. A blended approach follows, which enriches education for everybody. Innovations like project-based learning and hybrid methods are now the new norm. The rapid economic recovery has forestalled the collapse of the higher education system, but even so, many younger people prefer to attend community colleges and cheaper alternatives that allow more flexibility. Now, 2023. As we enter 2023, the Dow Jones reaches 35,000 points and unemployment is back at 4%. Americans feel safer and optimistic. However, some worry how long this can last. Talk of a bubble burst and growing debt threatens the confidence. The planet, which has been neglected in favor of a speedy recovery, is taking revenge, and extreme climate events are now the norm. Many start to think that maybe we are having too much fun. That's a little eerie at the end here. So, but it gives you a good kind of forecasting scenario in the event that the Dow recovers, because we've had a sell-off, but it recovers back to where its highs were at 35,000 points, and unemployment is back down to 4%. People are feeling, all right, things are getting better. They're feeling more optimistic because of the recovery back in the Dow and everything. But some worry because of like the problem's not fixed and it's just kind of like a band-aid, that how long can this last? And talks of a bubble burst and the growing debt threatens people's confidence in how long the system can manage to stay in place. And then the planet, which has been neglected, is taking revenge. So extreme climate events, and we're starting to see extreme climate events. And that's the narrative that the kind of elite consortium wants to push about green finance, the climate, and how they're looking to do a transition to a more sustainable future in all aspects, financial as well too, the financial system, making it more sustainable. So that I see as the narrative going into 2023. that being the case, and that's how they're going to implement this disorderly transition because of the extreme climate events and how it will become an emergency. So they say, what could this scenario mean for the Jewish community? It talks about this scenario could have, so then a new renaissance. This scenario could have far-ranging implications for the Jewish community. Here are some possibilities. The economic crisis is short. Some Jewish organizations don't survive the crisis, but most manage to bounce back. The speedy recovery means that the ecosystem of Jewish innovation comes back stronger. The search for the vaccine was, after all, trial and error, so society gains an appreciation for that daring attitude. Those who take risks in Jewish engagement are lionized. Because of the decrease in economic inequality, more people can pay tuitions and membership fees. And then the experiments with online learning, artificial intelligence, and other technologies mean that the cost of Jewish education and doing business in general decreases. So many organizations can charge lower tuitions or fees, attracting even more people. Then we have AI tools are redirected not to allow people to socialize distantly, but to enhance the person-to-person experience. The Renaissance of the arts offers a new, partially unexplored avenue. And there's a great opportunity to fund and create programs for that. Then it talks about, at the beginning of the crisis, the family was the focal center for many, and family-based communal programs thrived. But as the Renaissance take hold, the family unit weakens, and it's not so cool to do family-based activities once people can finally be outside. So there we go. So that's the new Renaissance, a new Renaissance scenario. And it kind of, if you haven't watched the video that I had put out earlier today, watch that first, because the World Economic Forum, Fourth Industrial Revolution, Great Reset, everything that I show in this, especially like the diagram here, where this diagram, it really embodies everything that this is kind of outlining, and some of the individual things that they're talking about, like the family, how family orientation is, how religion plays a role, how AI and technology and human service, etc., everything like that. It really, this kind of has the values of what World Economic Forum, Fourth Industrial Revolution is pushing as well too in the Great Reset. So I'm actually going to deep dive into this organization to get a background of them as well too. But yeah, so if you haven't watched this, definitely watch this first and then go into this video where you're at now. But then there's going to be 3 more videos. We're going to cover the 3 more scenarios. And then at the end video, I'll let you know where I think we're at as far as each one of these scenarios and how we can prepare to move forward now that it's coming to an end, 2022, and how we can kind of navigate our way through 2023 successfully. So that's it for this video. If you haven't subscribed yet, definitely subscribe so you can be notified when I post these additional videos along with this. So I'll see you in those next videos.